I'm Millie, 34 female. I live in a quiet city in the Midwest, in a downtown apartment that I've slowly turned into my personal sanctuary. As a senior data analyst for a major tech firm, I work from home, surrounded by the clean lines and organized calm I've built for myself. For the longest time, my life was all about building my career, my savings, and what I thought was a secure future for my family. This is the story of how the very foundation I built for them was used to bury me, and how I had to let it all collapse just to be able to breathe again. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My parents, Helen and Richard, were good people who had a tough run. My dad was a sales manager for a mid-size company that downsized him into an early retirement he wasn't financially ready for. My mom, a retired teacher, had a pension, but it was modest. They had their small home that they'd owned for 40 years, but it was falling apart. The roof leaked, the furnace was a relic from a bygone era, and the plumbing was a constant source of anxiety. They were proud, though, and never asked for a dime, which only made me want to help them more. I was the responsible one, the planner. My younger sister, Sophia, was the dreamer. While I was studying for certifications and climbing the corporate ladder, Sophia was flitting from one passion project to the next. First it was photography, then jewelry making, and most recently, she was a freelance event planner. The problem was, her events were few and far between, and she spent more time curating a social media feed about being a glamorous event planner than actually, well, planning events. She was 30 years old but still lived with our parents, contributing next to nothing and treating their crumbling house like a backdrop for her lifestyle blog. I loved them all, I truly did, but I saw the stress etched on my parents' faces every time a new repair bill showed up. So I started a plan. For 5 years, I lived frugally, invested wisely, and poured every spare dollar into a separate savings account I nicknamed the Parents Project. My goal was simple: buy them a new, safe, and comfortable home where they could enjoy their retirement without worrying if the next rainstorm would mean another bucket in the living room. My friend Liam, a financial advisor, was my sounding board through it all. He helped me structure my investments and, when the time came, navigate the complexities of real estate. "Are you sure about this, Millie?" he asked me over coffee one afternoon, looking over the pre-approval documents. "Putting a house in your name but having them live in it, it can get messy." "It's the only way, Liam," I explained. "Their credit is shot from some old debts, and their income is too low to qualify for a mortgage on a place like this. I'll own the house, I'll pay the mortgage and taxes, and they'll live there rent-free. It's a gift. They get the security, and I get the peace of mind." He nodded slowly. "Just make sure everything is ironclad. Your name, and only your name, on the deed and the mortgage." I assured him it would be. After months of searching, we found the perfect place. A single-story, 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It had a small, manageable garden for my mom and a proper workshop space in the garage for my dad. It was modern, efficient, and most importantly, everything worked. The day I told them was one of the happiest of my life. I gathered them in their old, cramped living room and presented them with a framed photo of the new house. My mom burst into tears, the happy, relieved kind. My dad, a man who rarely showed emotion, hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You didn't have to do this, Millie," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I wanted to," I said, my own eyes welling up. "You deserve it." Even Sophia seemed thrilled. She hugged me, gushing about how perfect the lighting would be for her photos and how she could host garden parties. I brushed off the self-centered comments, choosing to believe she was happy for our parents. The plan was for them to sell their old house and use the proceeds, around $80,000 after their old mortgage was paid off, to create a comfortable nest egg for their daily expenses and hobbies. It felt perfect. I was providing the house, the core of their security, and they would have their own money for everything else. The closing process went smoothly. I signed a mountain of paperwork, my hand cramping by the end. The mortgage was in my name. The deed was in my name. I was the sole legal owner of that property. I made it explicitly clear to my parents. "This is my house," I explained gently, not to be controlling, but to be clear about the legal structure. "You are my permanent, lifelong guests. All you have to do is live here and be happy. I will handle the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, everything." They nodded, tears in their eyes, promising they understood. They were just so grateful. On moving day, I was there with boxes and a rented truck, helping them settle in. Seeing my mom arrange her teacups in the new, spacious kitchen and my dad exploring his workshop brought a profound sense of accomplishment. I had done it. I had given them the comfortable, stress-free retirement they deserved. Sophia was there too, directing the placement of furniture for aesthetic purposes and documenting the entire day for her followers. Her contribution was minimal, but her presence seemed to make our parents happy, so I let it slide. That first night, we all sat on the new patio, eating pizza out of the box, and for the first time in years, my parents looked completely at peace. The weight of their old, decaying house was gone. I felt like the best daughter in the world, basking in the warmth of my own generosity. I had built them a foundation of generosity and trust, never imagining that they were already planning to use it to build a future for someone else entirely. The first 6 months were blissful. Every weekend, I'd drive over for dinner. My mom would be trying out new recipes in her modern kitchen, and my dad would show me his latest woodworking project. Sophia was always there, of course. She had taken over the largest of the spare bedrooms, turning it into a combination office and photo studio. She'd talk endlessly about brand collaborations that were just about to happen and the challenges of being a creative entrepreneur. My parents would listen with rapt attention, nodding and offering words of encouragement. "It's so wonderful that Sophia has a stable place to build her business," my mom said to me one afternoon as we were planting flowers in the garden. "The old house was so depressing for her. This energy is much better for her brand." I just smiled and nodded. If Sophia being there made my parents happy, then it was a small price to pay. I was paying the mortgage, after all, and if they wanted her under their roof, that was their decision. The arrangement was working. I paid all the bills related to the house directly from my bank account, the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance. It was a significant chunk of my income, but I had budgeted for it, and seeing my parents so happy made it worth every penny. The first crack in the foundation appeared subtly. About 8 months in, I received a standard letter from the county property assessor's office. It was just a confirmation of the property details for the upcoming tax assessment. I almost tossed it onto the pile of junk mail, but something made me open it. I scanned the details, parcel number, property address, lot size. Everything looked correct. Then my eyes landed on the section labeled Owner of Record. It listed my name, Millie Thompson, and then right below it, Sophia Thompson. I blinked, reading it again. It had to be a mistake, a clerical error. There was no way Sophia's name could be on anything related to the property. I had been the only one at the closing. My name was the only one on the mortgage and the original deed. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, but I tried to rationalize it. The county must have messed up. I made a mental note to call them on Monday. That weekend, I went over to the house for our usual Sunday dinner. I decided not to mention the letter. I didn't want to worry my parents over what was likely just a bureaucratic mix-up, but I found myself watching Sophia more closely. She flitted around the house with an air of ownership I'd never noticed before. She talked about her garden and her plans for redecorating the guest bathroom. "I was thinking of painting the living room a new color," she announced over dinner. "This beige is so uninspired. I need a better backdrop for my content." My dad, Richard, chuckled. "Whatever you think is best, honey, you've got the eye for design." I felt a prickle of irritation. It's a new house, Soph. The paint is barely a year old. She gave me a dismissive wave of her hand. "It's about creating a vibe, Millie. You wouldn't get it." My mom quickly changed the subject, but the entitlement in Sophia's tone lingered in the air. On Monday morning, My first call was to the county assessor's office. After a frustrating 20 minutes on hold, I finally got through to a clerk. I explained the situation, gave her the parcel number, and asked her to verify the owners of record. "All right, let's see," she said, her voice monotone as she clicked away on her keyboard. "I have the owner listed as Millie Thompson and Sophia Thompson, added via a quitclaim deed filed on." She paused. "Looks like it was filed about 6 months ago." The phone felt slick in my hand. "A quitclaim deed? What does that mean? I didn't sign anything." "Well, ma'am, a quitclaim deed transfers interest in a property. It looks like Millie Thompson transferred her interest to Millie Thompson and Sophia Thompson, making you joint tenants." "That's impossible," I said, my voice rising. "I never signed any such document. It has to be a forgery." The clerk sounded sympathetic but firm. "All I can tell you is what's on the document we have on file. It was signed by a Millie Thompson and notarized. If you believe it's fraudulent, you'll probably need to speak with an attorney." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. A quitclaim deed, notarized, 6 months ago. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. It was shortly after they had moved in, during that initial honeymoon period when everyone was so happy and grateful. How could they have done this? My name was on it. Had they forged my signature? The very idea seemed insane. My parents? My sweet, retired parents who I had just saved from a collapsing house? And Sophia, entitled as she was, orchestrating something like this seemed beyond her. But the document existed. The county had it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Betrayal is a funny thing. It doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt, it seeps in like a slow-acting poison. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate act. They had gone behind my back, using the gift I had given them to fundamentally alter its nature. They hadn't just invited a guest, they had secretly handed her the keys to the kingdom. My kingdom. The one I was paying for. The sense of violation was overwhelming. I looked around my pristine apartment, the symbol of my hard work and independence, and felt like its walls were closing in. I had built a house for them on a foundation of love, and they had just dynamited it. The rage came first, hot and blinding. I wanted to storm over to the house, throw the fraudulent document in their faces, and demand an explanation. But what would that accomplish? They would deny it, or worse, they would try to justify it with some twisted logic that would only infuriate me more. No, I needed to be smart. I had built my career on logic and data, on finding the signal in the noise. My emotions were the noise right now. I needed the signal. I called Liam. "I need your help," I said, my voice tight. "And I think I might need that lawyer you recommended a while back." I explained the situation, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt as I recounted the conversation with the county clerk. Liam was silent for a moment after I finished. "A quitclaim deed," he said, his voice grim. "That's bold, Millie, and incredibly stupid on their part. Forging a legal document is a felony." "What do I do, Liam?" "First, you get a copy of that deed. Go down to the county records office in person. Don't call. Get a certified copy. See the signature for yourself. See who the notary was. That's your first piece of evidence." The next day, I took a personal day from work and drove to the county government building. The records office was a sterile, quiet place that smelled of old paper and bureaucracy. My hands shook as I filled out the request form. 20 minutes later, the clerk returned and slid a document across the counter. There it was in black and white. A legal document stating that I, Millie Thompson, transferred the property to myself and Sophia Thompson, and at the bottom there was my signature, or a clumsy, almost laughable imitation of it. It was clearly a forgery. The M was too loopy, and the T was slanted the wrong way. It was the kind of signature a person would create from memory without a real sample to copy. Below it was the signature and stamp of a notary public, a name I didn't recognize. My blood ran cold. This was real. They had actually done it. They had conspired together, my parents and my sister, to forge my name and steal a 50% stake in a house I was paying for. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. That weekend, I drove to the house with the copy of the deed tucked in my purse. I had to see them. I had to look them in the eye and pretend everything was normal. I needed to understand how they could act so loving, so grateful, while hiding such a monumental betrayal. When I walked in, Sophia was in the living room, directing my dad on where to hang a large, framed canvas print of herself. It was a dramatic, filtered shot of her staring wistfully into the middle distance. "A little to the left, Dad," she commanded. "It needs to be the first thing people see when they walk in. It sets the tone for the whole house." My mom came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Oh, Millie, you're here. Doesn't it look wonderful? Sophia is really making this place her own." I felt a wave of nausea. Making this place her own. I was no longer just a daughter visiting her parents. I was a guest in a house that was being rebranded by a freeloader, a house that was still being paid for by my salary. "It's big," I managed to say, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. Dinner was surreal. They chatted happily about their plans. Sophia was going to build a new, larger patio for entertaining her clients. My parents were thinking of getting a dog, a golden retriever Sophia had always wanted. They talked about the future of the house, their house, as if I were just a distant relative who had chipped in for the down payment. At one point, my mom touched my hand across the table. "We are so grateful for this, Millie. You have no idea. You've given Sophia such a wonderful foundation to finally launch her life. She was so stuck in that old house." The justification. There it was. In their minds, this wasn't for them at all. I hadn't bought a retirement home for my parents. I had bought a launch pad for my deadbeat sister. They had accepted my gift under false pretenses. They saw me not as their generous daughter, but as a resource to be exploited for the benefit of their favorite child. The pain of that realization was sharper than the anger. I had always known they coddled Sophia. They always excused her failures and financed her whims. I was the reliable one, the one who never needed anything, so I was the one who was expected to give. I had just never imagined they would take it this far, to commit a crime against me, for her. As I drove home that night, the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. They must have used a mobile notary, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. They probably found one online, paid them in cash, and had them come to the house. They would have presented my ID, a driver's license I had probably left in my old room at their previous house at some point, and forged my signature right there. It was a desperate, sloppy, and deeply insulting plan. I walked into my apartment and the anger returned, colder and harder this time. My love for them hadn't been reciprocated, it had been weaponized. My generosity had been seen as a weakness. They had made me a guest in my own gift. Fine, if I was just a guest, then I could also just leave. And I could take the entire house with me. The mortgage, after all, was still in my name, and my name alone. They had tied themselves to me with a fraudulent document, not realizing they had just handed me the rope to hang them with. The decision was made before I even fell asleep that night. There would be no emotional confrontation, no tearful accusations. They had operated with deception, and I would respond with strategy. My feelings of hurt and betrayal were fuel now, powering a cold, logical machine. They wanted the house? They could have it, but they would have to pay for it, just like I was. My first step was to untangle the financial and legal mess they had created. The next morning, I met with the lawyer Liam had recommended, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah. I laid out the whole story, including the certified copy of the quitclaim deed. She examined the forged signature, then the notary stamp. "This is messy," she said, her expression grim, "but it's also incredibly clear-cut. This is fraud. We could press criminal charges." "I don't want to send my parents to jail," I said, the thought still turning my stomach despite my anger. "I just want this fixed. I want my name off the deed, and I want to be free of this entire situation." Getting your name off the deed when another name has been fraudulently added is complicated, Sarah explained. "We'd have to file a lawsuit to quiet title, proving the fraud to a judge. It's expensive and time-consuming. It could take over a year." A year of fighting with my family in court, a year of legal fees, a year of being tied to that house and to them. It was the last thing I wanted. There has to be another way, I insisted. Sarah leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen on her legal pad. The quitclaim deed is a problem for the title, but it doesn't change the primary legal obligation you have. What's the status of the mortgage? It's solely in my name, I confirmed. I'm the only borrower. I've been making every payment. A slight smile touched her lips. Then that's your leverage. The bank doesn't care about the names on the deed as much as they care about the name on the mortgage. The person on the mortgage is responsible for the payments. If the payments stop, the bank forecloses on the property, regardless of who is on the title. The path forward suddenly became crystal clear. Simple, elegant, brutal. So if I stop paying the mortgage, I said slowly, the bank will foreclose and evict whoever is living there. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. It will wreck your credit for a number of years. You need to be prepared for that, but it's a guaranteed way to sever your connection to that property. The foreclosure process will wipe the slate clean. The bank takes the house, sells it at auction, and everyone on the title, fraudulent or not, is out. It's the nuclear option, but it's CL. And my credit score, which I had painstakingly built to over 800, would be destroyed. But what was a number compared to my freedom? Compared to the justice I felt I was owed, it was a worthy sacrifice. Before I pulled the trigger, however, I needed one more piece of information. I had to understand the full scope of their financial deception. I had given them the proceeds from the sale of their old house, that $80,000, to be their safety net. Where did that money go? This was where my skills as a data analyst came into play. I had helped my dad set up his online banking years ago and still had the login information saved in my password manager to help him with any technical issues. Morally, it felt like a gray area, but they had waltzed into felony territory first. I felt justified. I logged into their joint bank account. My heart sank as I looked at the transaction history. The $80,000 had been deposited 8 months ago. Now, the balance was less than $5,000. I started scrolling through the withdrawals, and a sickening story began to emerge. There were huge payments to catering companies, venues, and floral suppliers. Thousands of dollars. I cross-referenced the dates with Sophia's social media. She had been the planner for a handful of small, unimpressive events, but these expenses were huge. It quickly became obvious that she wasn't just planning them, she was financing them. She was likely underbidding to get the jobs, then using our parents' nest egg to cover the costs and make it look like she was running a successful business. Then I saw it, a wire transfer for $35,000 to a car dealership. The memo line simply read, "New SUV." A quick search of her social media confirmed it. There she was, 2 months ago, posing in front of a brand new, top-of-the-line luxury SUV with a caption that read, "Leveling up, hard work pays off, boss babe entrepreneur life." Hard work, my hard work. My parents' entire life savings, the money that was supposed to last them for the rest of their lives, had been squandered in less than a year to prop up Sophia's fantasy life. They had given her a house, my house, and their life savings, all of it. That was the final piece of the puzzle. The quitclaim deed wasn't just about giving Sophia a place to live. It was about securing her an asset. They knew the money was running out. They must have panicked and decided that giving her a legal stake in the house was the only way to secure her future. They had sacrificed my trust, my generosity, and their own financial security for her. I logged out of their bank account, my hands steady now. The last ounce of doubt or guilt I had vanished. They hadn't just made a mistake, they had engaged in a systematic pattern of deception and financial recklessness. They had made their choices. Now I would make mine. I opened my banking app and navigated to the bill pay section. I looked at the next mortgage payment, scheduled to be automatically withdrawn in 3 days. With a single, decisive click, I canceled it. Then I canceled all future payments. The controlled demolition had begun. The first charge had been set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the bank to light the fuse. The first month of non-payment passed in silence. I screened all calls from numbers I didn't recognize and set up a filter on my email to divert anything from the mortgage company into a separate folder. I knew the first wave of communications would be automated emails and calls, gentle reminders about a missed payment. I ignored them all. Outwardly, I maintained the status quo. I still answered my parents' calls, keeping the conversations short and superficial. I made excuses for why I couldn't come to Sunday dinner. Work is just swamped, I'd say. I have a huge project deadline. They didn't push. They were likely so wrapped up in Sophia's world that my absence was barely a blip on their radar. They were living in a beautiful house they believed they now co-owned, with no bills to pay. Life was good for them. The second month brought a shift in the bank's tone. The automated reminders were replaced by letters printed on more urgent-looking paper. Notice of delinquency, one of the envelopes read. I opened it, scanned it, and filed it away in a shoebox I labeled evidence. The calls also became more frequent, coming from a human representative in the loss mitigation department. I let every one of them go to voicemail. By the middle of the third month, the official notice of intent to accelerate arrived via certified mail. This was the big one. It was the bank's final warning, stating that if the full past due amount wasn't paid immediately, they would demand the entire remaining balance of the mortgage and begin foreclosure proceedings. The fuse was lit. It was around this time that I got the first panicked call from my dad. "Millie, we got a strange letter in the mail today," he said, his voice laced with confusion. "It's from your mortgage company. It says the loan is in default. It must be some kind of mistake, right?" I feigned ignorance. "A mistake? That's weird. What does it say?" "It says you haven't paid the mortgage in 3 months. It's threatening foreclosure. You need to call them right away and clear this up. It must be a bank error." "Oh wow, that's crazy," I said, my voice dripping with fake concern. "Yeah, I'll look into it. Don't worry about it, Dad." I hung up, a cold sense of satisfaction washing over me. They had no idea. They genuinely believed this was a simple mix-up, something the ever-reliable Millie would handle with a single phone call. The thought that I would deliberately stop paying was so alien to them it didn't even register as a possibility. Their entitlement had blinded them. A week later, my mom called, her voice frantic. "Millie, more letters came, and a man came and took pictures of the house. He said he was from the bank. What is going on? Did you call them?" "Things are a little complicated at work right now, Mom," I said evasively. "It's a financial issue. I'm trying to sort it out." "A financial issue?" she shrieked. "What does that mean? Are you in trouble? We could be kicked out of our home." The hypocrisy was astounding. Our home? "I'm doing my best to manage it," I said, my voice flat. "I'll handle it." The true beauty of my plan was its passivity. I wasn't actively doing anything to them. I was simply withdrawing. I was withdrawing my money, my support, and my presence. I was letting the natural consequences of the situation I was in, a situation they had created by forging my name and adding a co-owner, play out according to the bank's unfeeling, legally binding rules. They had made me a co-owner with their freeloader daughter, so I decided to act like one. I stopped paying. Liam was my rock during this time. He was worried about the long-term impact on my credit, but he understood why I was doing it. "They created a partnership by adding Sophia to the deed," he said one evening as we looked over the growing pile of bank notices. "In a partnership, all partners are responsible. So let's see if the other partner, Sophia, is willing to step up and pay the mortgage." We both knew she wouldn't. She couldn't. The money from my parents was gone, spent on her image and a ridiculously expensive car. Her event planning business was a facade. The official foreclosure notice was served at the end of the 4th month. A legal notice was taped to the front door of the house, and the proceedings were filed with the county court. This time, all 3 of them called me, one after another. I didn't answer. Instead, they left a string of increasingly hysterical voicemails. My dad's was first, full of confused anger. "Millie, call me back right now. What in the world is going on? There is a legal notice on our door. Our neighbors saw it. My mom's was tearful. Millie, please, we don't understand. Are you okay? Why are you doing this to us? After everything we've been through. Sophia S. was the most revealing. Millie, this is completely unacceptable, she shrieked into the phone. My brand is associated with this house. A foreclosure? Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? You are ruining my life. You need to fix this now. Not our life, my life. It was never about our parents' security. It was always about her. I listened to the voicemails, deleted them, and took a deep, cleansing breath. The demolition was proceeding exactly as planned. The walls of their comfortable, stolen life were beginning to tremble. Soon, they would all come crashing down, and I wouldn't be anywhere near the blast zone. I had built the structure, and I knew all of its weak points. The foundation, my money, was gone. The collapse was inevitable. The notice of foreclosure set a firm timeline. There would be a 90-day period where the default could be cured by paying the entire past-due amount plus fees. After that, a public auction date would be set. This 90-day window became the stage for the final act of my family's drama. Suddenly, I was the most popular person they knew. My phone buzzed incessantly with their calls and texts. They oscillated between begging, demanding, and guilt-tripping. I maintained my radio silence, letting them spin in the hurricane of consequences they had brewed. The one person I did talk to was Liam. They're going to get desperate, he warned me. They might try to get a loan to pay the reinstatement fee, but with Sophia's name on the deed now, her credit, or lack thereof, will be a factor. And your parents have no income or credit to speak of. He was right. About a month into the 90-day period, I received a notification from my credit monitoring service. A hard inquiry from a mortgage lender. They were trying to refinance the mortgage into their names, or more accurately, Sophia's name. A few days later, another inquiry from a different lender. And then another. They were shop. Ping around, trying to find anyone, who would give a loan to a fake influencer with no verifiable income to take over a property that was already in foreclosure. It was a fool's errand. The rejections must have been swift and brutal because the tone of their messages shifted from panic to accusatory. It was no longer about my mysterious financial trouble. It was now my fault, a malicious act designed to hurt them. One evening, there was a frantic banging on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw all three of them standing in the hallway, their faces grim. My dad, my mom, and Sophia. They had come to confront me. My first instinct was to ignore them, but I knew they wouldn't leave. This was it. The confrontation I had avoided was now on my doorstep. I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. "We need to talk," my dad, Richard, said, pushing past me into the apartment. My mom and Sophia followed, looking around my clean, organized space with resentful eyes. "There's nothing to talk about," I said calmly, closing the door. "Nothing to talk about?" my mom, Helen, cried, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. "We are about to be homeless. The home you bought for us is being taken away. How can you be so cruel?" I leaned against the door and crossed my arms, looking at them one by one. The two people who were supposed to love and protect me, and the sister who had been a leech her entire life. "Let's be very clear," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I bought a house for you," I looked at my parents, "to live in for the rest of your lives. My name was on the deed. My name was on the mortgage. It was my property and my responsibility." I then turned my gaze to Sophia, who was staring at her phone, refusing to make eye contact. But that wasn't good enough, was it? You decided you weren't just content to live there. You had to own it. I walked over to my desk and picked up a file folder. From it, I pulled the certified copy of the quitclaim deed. I held it up. "Recognize this? This is a document filed with the county. A document that says I willingly transferred partial ownership of my house to Sophia. And this," I pointed to the bottom, "is a forgery of my signature." Silence. My dad's face went pale. My mom stared at the document, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Sophia finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. You went behind my back, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You committed a felony. You forged my name to give Sophia a legal stake in an asset she didn't earn and doesn't pay for. You thought I was a fool who would just keep paying the mortgage forever while she reaped the benefits. My dad finally found his voice. We were just trying to secure Sophia's future. You have your career, your savings. She has nothing. We were trying to be fair. Fair? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think it's fair to steal from one child to give to another? You think it's fair that I work 60 hours a week so she can drive a luxury SUV you paid for with your retirement savings? Did you think I wouldn't find out about that either? The $80,000 you were supposed to live on. Gone in less than a year to fund her fake lifestyle. That hit them hard. My mom sank onto the arm of my sofa, her face ashen. You made a business decision, I said, my voice like ice. You made Sophia a co-owner, a partner. Well, in business, when one partner stops contributing, the business fails. I stopped contributing. The payments stopped. The bank is now foreclosing on a property owned by Millie Thompson and Sophia Thompson. If Sophia, my business partner, would like to cure the $15,000 default and assume the $2,500 monthly payments, she is more than welcome to. The bank would be thrilled. Sophia stared at me aghast. I can't do that. I don't have that kind of money. Then that is truly a shame, I said, turning my back on them and walking towards the door. Because I am done. You wanted the house, you got it. And you got all the responsibilities that come with it. You have about 45 days until the auction date. I suggest you start packing. I opened the door. Please leave. They were stunned into silence. They looked at me, then at each other, the reality of their situation finally crashing down on them. There was no rescue. The bank didn't care about their feelings. And neither did I. They had made their bed, a luxurious king-sized bed in a house they didn't pay for, and now they were being evicted from it. Defeated, they shuffled out of my apartment, leaving me alone in the silence. I closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in months, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had finally broken. The 90-day window closed, and as expected, the default was not cured. The bank set the auction date for the house. In the weeks leading up to it, I received a few more voicemails. Why were no longer angry or demanding, but hollow and defeated. My dad left one, his voice raspy, asking if they could get some of their things from the house after the bank took it. I didn't respond. It wasn't my house anymore. It was the bank's problem. I heard through the grapevine of mutual family acquaintances that it was a scramble. They had sold Sophia's luxury SUV for a significant loss, but it was nowhere near enough to make a difference. They rented a small, cramped apartment in a less than desirable part of town, a place far worse than the old, crumbling house they had started in. All three of them living together again. Sophia's glamorous influencer life had evaporated overnight. Without the beautiful house as a backdrop, her content looked cheap and uninspired. Her followers dwindled. Her business collapsed. The day of the auction, I didn't go. I didn't even check the results online. To me, that chapter was over. The house and everything it represented was a ruin. It was time to focus on rebuilding. The foreclosure hit my credit score exactly as Sarah and Liam had predicted. My pristine 820 plummeted to the low 500s. It was a jarring sight, but strangely, I felt no panic. It was the cost of my freedom, a price I was willing to pay. I knew that, unlike my family, I had the discipline and the income to rebuild it. It was just another project, another set of data points to improve over time. I cut up my credit cards and started living strictly on my debit card. I created a new, aggressive budget, channeling the money that had once gone to the mortgage into savings and investments. Liam helped me set up a new financial plan focused on credit repair and long-term growth. In 2 years, you'll be back in the 600s. In 5, you'll be back over 700, he assured me. You're playing the long game, Millie. They played a short, stupid one. My life became quiet and focused. I poured my energy into my work, earning a promotion and a substantial raise. I found new hobbies. I started hiking on the weekends, finding peace in the solitude of nature. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected while I was so focused on my family. For the first time, I was living entirely for myself, and it was liberating. About a year after the foreclosure, I got an email from my mom. The subject line was just my name. The email was short and filled with a remorse I wasn't sure was genuine or just born of desperation. "Millie," it read, "I know we have no right to ask you for anything. What we did was wrong. We were foolish, and we have paid the price for it every single day. Sophia is working a retail job. Your father is looking for part-time work. We are barely getting by. I just wanted to say I am sorry." I read the email several times. A younger version of me might have felt a pang of guilt, a pull to rescue them once again, but I wasn't that person anymore. They had taught me a valuable lesson. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I thought about a reply, about all the things I could say. But in the end, I simply moved the email to the trash folder and emptied it. Their apology was an ash from a fire I was no longer tending. My life is different now. It's smaller in some ways, no grand gestures, no supporting of an entire family, but it's also infinitely larger. My world is defined by my own choices, my own hard work, and my own boundaries. The rubble of that house, both the physical one and the metaphorical one I had built for my family, is in the past. I have a new foundation now, one built not on the shifting sands of familial obligation, but on the bedrock of self-respect. It's a smaller structure, for now, built just for me, but it's strong, and it's a home no one can ever take away.